Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Aisling Murphy. Aisling Murphy, born in 1998, was the youngest of three siblings. Her family lived in Blue Ball, Ireland, a peaceful town about an hour's drive from Dublin. Aisling grew up in a loving environment, influenced by her father's passion for music, particularly the bagpipes and violin. Inspired by him, she began studying traditional Irish music. She joined a youth choir in school and later became part of an orchestra, performing folk music at various events across Ireland and Great Britain. She was talented, independent, and sociable, which allowed her to integrate well with her team and feel comfortable on stage. After graduating from school, Aisling quickly sought employment. She was determined to achieve complete independence from her parents, so she began searching for full-time job opportunities right after receiving her diploma. Despite her career ambitions, she continued to nurture her love for music. She often performed for her relatives during special family gatherings on weekends, which further strengthened their connections. Aisling wanted to create her own family someday, but first, she focused on establishing herself. She went to college and became a first-grade teacher at a school where she had previously studied. This moment in her life was very meaningful. The teachers and students appreciated Aisling for her energy, kindness, and creativity. Aisling was truly suited for this role due to her strong moral character. She made a smooth transition from being an excellent student to becoming a wonderful teacher. Aisling was friendly, well-mannered, sweet, and self-assured. During her first week of work, she taught music on weekends, showing her passion for her job and her enjoyment of working with children. At 28, she had been in a relationship with her boyfriend, Ryan, for over 6 years. They met when Aisling was just 15. Initially, their romance didn't last, and they broke up after a few months. However, they eventually reunited, realizing that they were too young when they first started dating as teenagers. Their feelings for each other reignited, and they fell deeply in love, often talking about their future, including marriage and children. They had planned a trip in 2 days, but unfortunately, it seemed their dreams would not come to fruition. Aisling finished her workday and planned to go for a run along the Grand Canal in Tullamore. This was a routine activity for her, as she enjoyed fitness and outdoor recreation. She loved walking or running in beautiful locations, so she often visited the canal when she could. The Grand Canal was a popular spot for runners, featuring a designated path for walking. It was usually busy, which made Aisling comfortable going there alone. After work, Aisling got ready for her run. She first went home to change her clothes and tell her mother about her schedule. Her mother reassured her daughter that she was old enough to take care of herself and that there was no danger in this. Aisling left, and that was the last time her mother saw her alive. About an hour after Aisling left home, 2 runners warming up along the Grand Canal called for help. They were running on one side of the canal and saw a man attacking a girl on the opposite bank. Since they didn't have mobile phones, they ran to the nearest payphone to report the incident. They informed the emergency dispatcher that they had witnessed a threatening man assaulting one of the female runners. The witnesses confirmed that the victim was still alive when the attacker dragged her into the bushes. She screamed and fought back, desperately trying to push him away, but she was clearly outmatched. The dispatchers sent police officers to the specified location. Upon arrival, the police and a witness found the body of a young woman at the canal. The young girl, who showed no signs of life, was found to have been severely beaten, as the caller had reported. She had been pulled off the paved road and into the bushes, where she suffered physical abuse. Her face and neck were covered in cuts, and her hair was matted with dried blood. Paramedics arrived and attempted to resuscitate her for 10 minutes, but they were unable to save her and confirmed her death. While the exact cause of death remained unclear, it was evident she had been beaten badly. The body of the murdered girl was sent for an autopsy, which revealed stab and cut wounds on her neck. A forensic expert identified 11 injuries, primarily on the right side of her neck, including a cut throat that rendered her unable to call for help. Signs of possible strangulation were also found. The victim was identified as Aisling Murphy. On her hands, there were deep cuts, likely sustained during a struggle. Keys were discovered near her body, and it was determined she had used them defensively, gripping them tightly in an effort to fight off her attacker. The weapon used in the attack did not inflict enough damage to prevent the criminal from continuing his assault. Aisling died from severe blood loss caused by multiple stab wounds to her neck, leading to her death within minutes. Near her body, police found sunglasses and a mobile phone in her jacket pocket. An abandoned bicycle was also found nearby, likely belonging to the attacker. The criminal had already fled the scene after harming his innocent victim. The brutality of the attack was shocking, especially since it occurred in broad daylight in a crowded area with witnesses. 2 runners who were in the vicinity witnessed the crime. They observed both the attack and the assailant. They provided vital information to the police. The first witness, Emma, reported that she was walking her dog by the Grand Canal when she noticed a girl jogging. She saw a man on a bright green bicycle closely following the jogger. Initially, Emma thought they might be running together because the cyclist stayed so close to the girl. She described the cyclist as looking like a migrant, not Irish. He had yellowish skin, a short haircut, and was wearing a black tracksuit with red logos. Later, Emma met another witness, Jenna, and together they witnessed the cyclist attack the girl. The attack appeared sudden and unprovoked. Jenna witnessed the attack and provided a detailed account. Her description matched that of another witness, who reported that the victim screamed, threatening the attacker, but then suddenly fell silent. This silence was caused by a wound to Aisling's neck that severely severed her vocal cords. Later, Jenna screamed loudly, threatening to call the police. Despite the threats, the attacker did not let go of the victim. Police found a green bicycle near the trail that belonged to the attacker. Meanwhile, police gathered more evidence and discovered that Aisling had been wearing a fitness tracker while running. The device recorded her body metrics, including speed, distance, and heart rate, helping to clarify the details surrounding her death. The data showed that Aisling started running at 2:51 p.m., and before that, GPS records showed she had parked her bike near the canal. After that, her pulse was around 100 beats per minute, indicating she was in an active phase. She maintained this heart rate until 15:21, during which she ran approximately 3 kilometers. However, after 15:21, her heart rate changed. The Aisling experienced erratic fluctuations, and GPS data showed she was standing still at that time. This was clearly when she was attacked, and by 15:31, her heart had stopped beating. The next step for the police was to review footage from surveillance cameras in the area. Police identified the locations of all recording devices, hoping to find video that would show the suspect, the victim, and the attack itself. Police checked surveillance cameras, focusing on the time frame between 12:25 and 16:05, and were able to identify a man who matched the witness description exactly. It appeared that he was moving randomly along the roads. They determined that this man had appeared long before Aisling's arrival and was using a bicycle identical to the one found at the crime scene. The prime suspect was wearing a black hoodless jacket and sweatpants with stripes down the side, and also had a red logo on his clothes, as Emma described. He had been following a woman in a dark burgundy jacket but was later spotted by her. He had been looking at the victim with interest, but for some unknown reason he quickly fell behind. In footage from another camera, the suspect stops at 1:53 p.m. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out an object. He is seen holding and twisting something in his hand, but the poor quality of the footage makes it difficult to determine what it is. Police suspect he pulled out a knife, which he then used to kill Aisling. A forensic expert concluded that Aisling was killed with a small serrated knife, as the wounds had jagged edges. The man was seen again on surveillance footage at around 2:55 p.m., just as Aisling began training on the trail. Police discovered that the suspect had been wandering around the area, apparently looking for victims, as he occasionally focused on different women. He followed these women at a distance but lost interest until he came across Aisling, whom he decided to attack. Unfortunately, the surveillance cameras did not capture high-quality images that could help identify the criminal. Hours after the attack, a suspect was arrested based on information from witnesses. The suspect, Griot Keegan, is a 39-year-old Romanian immigrant who has lived in Ireland for 23 years and has no criminal record. He matched the person seen on surveillance cameras and found near the scene of the attack. At the police station, he vehemently denied any involvement in the incident. While police were questioning him, police obtained a search warrant and thoroughly searched his house, but found no evidence of his guilt. Griot maintained that there had been a mistake. He provided an alibi that was verified. He had been in a store making a purchase, which was confirmed by his receipt and surveillance footage. After that, he was seen walking along the south bank of the canal while the murder occurred on the north bank. The suspect's fingerprints and DNA samples were collected to compare with skin particles found under the Aisling's nails and on the bicycle, but there was no match. This confirmed that he was not involved in the crime. He was cleared of all suspicions and released. However, for some time, he and his family received threats as local residents still viewed him as a murderer. He was temporarily provided with alternative housing, and the police issued a public statement clarifying that Griot was not connected to the crime. Only after this did the public stop harassing him. This case received wide publicity across the country. The local community was outraged by the attack on Aisling and called on the police to quickly identify and arrest the perpetrators responsible for the tragic death of a talented young woman in broad daylight. For days, police have been trying to piece together clues, and the situation has taken a surprising turn. On the evening following the attack, a 30-year-old man named Josef Puska was admitted to a hospital in Dublin with abdominal injuries. Josef was originally from a small village in Slovakia. He left school at 16 without finishing his education and spent most of his life working as a laborer in the Czech Republic. Although he faced challenges in his lifestyle and at school, Josef was not involved with bad influences, had no criminal record, and was generally seen as a positive individual. In 2015, he moved to Dublin, Ireland, where he and his wife planned to settle permanently. He continued his work as a builder, and during their time there, they welcomed 5 children. Everything seemed to be going well until he suffered a back injury at work. After his recovery, Josef found that he could not return to his previous activities. The back injury was more severe than he had anticipated, leading him to receive disability benefits. He spent a significant amount of time in the hospital, and afterward, he relied on state support. The financial situation was tight, so his wife had to work. Josef had limited proficiency in Irish and struggled with English, which made it difficult for him to communicate with medical staff. When he went to the hospital the day after Aisling's murder, he needed an interpreter for assistance. Thanks to the interpreter, Josef explained that he was in Blanchardstown the previous day, January 12th. He took a taxi there and noticed he was being followed as soon as he arrived, but he did not think much of it since it was daytime. Suddenly, the attackers assaulted him, stabbing him multiple times in the stomach before they ran away. He managed to get home, where he informed his family about the incident and called for an ambulance. Doctors discovered cuts on Josef's hands, signs of defensive wounds. He had multiple stab wounds in his abdomen and received painkillers before a 2-hour surgery. The surgery was completed around 10 o'clock. The doctors concluded that Yosef's injuries were from stab wounds inflicted by a small knife, but they were not life-threatening. He remained in the hospital for several days to recover. As part of their protocol, the doctors informed the police about the incident. Officers came to speak with Yosef, who was the victim of another attack. Police suspected that the same criminal who attacked Aisling might also be responsible for Yosef's injuries. During the conversation, Yosef's behavior became increasingly awkward and suspicious. He seemed confused, struggled to recall simple details, and appeared noticeably nervous. Police began to question whether this unemployed man could be connected to Aisling's murder. The next day, the police returned to the hospital to continue questioning and gather more details. This time, Yosef gave more specific answers. He explained that he had taken a taxi to the city to meet a woman he had met online. Yosef then revealed that he was married with 5 children but did not want his wife to know about his secret encounters. It was later discovered that he had registered on several dating websites and was regularly seeing different women. His wife remained unaware of his affair, as Yosef was very careful to keep it a secret. The police asked Yosef if he owned a bicycle. He replied that he had a green bicycle that he had used for a long time. However, when they inquired whether he had been riding it on the day of the murder, Yosef started to stutter and claimed that his bicycle had been stolen over 2 weeks ago. He had not reported the theft to the police, which raised suspicions. Yosef then appeared increasingly anxious, prompting police to leave his hospital room. The police also discovered that he had been near the canal around 6 p.m. that same day. They obtained a warrant to search his apartment, allowing them to collect his clothing and mobile phone for forensic analysis. They called Yosef to inform him of this. Sensing something was amiss, he directly asked the police, through an interpreter, if he was a suspect. The officers reassured him that they were merely trying to clarify the situation and needed to conduct an examination. This conversation occurred over the phone. After the police answered, the Yosef paused for a long moment. Then he turned to the translator and asked him to accurately relay his words to the police officer. Yosef admitted that he had killed the girl by the canal, but he insisted that it was unintentional and an accident. Later, the Yosef addressed the police directly. He explained that he was riding his bicycle along a path when he encountered an unfamiliar girl. He had a knife in his hand and accidentally cut her in the neck after losing his balance. She became angry, which frightened Yosef, and he claimed he struck her in the stomach with an object that resembled a knife. He said he tried to remain calm, hoping the girl would settle down. However, she began screaming and threatening him even more, forcing Yosef to defend himself. He then attacked her, repeatedly stabbing her in the neck with his knife. She fought back desperately, but he was able to overpower her. The police were taken aback by his phone confession, finding the story hard to believe. It seemed implausible that Yosef could accidentally stab the victim in the neck before she attacked him. They questioned how Aisling could have had a knife. Yosef expressed fear of retaliation. He believed that if Aisling's friends and relatives learned of the incident, they might harm his children and wife. He asked the police to keep the names of his family members confidential. The police assured Yosef that he would not face prosecution as he would soon be arrested and put on trial. After being discharged from hospital, he was immediately arrested for murder. Afterward, the Yosef changed his story and refused to confess. Despite this, the prosecutor's office viewed him as the only person who could have harmed Aisling that day. They decided to seek the maximum punishment for the murderer. The initial trial date was set for June 2023, but there were several delays, and it wasn't until October 2023 that the prosecution presented the case to the jury. During the trial, prosecutors played surveillance footage showing an attacker who looked like Yosef cycling along a path near the canal for hours before targeting Aisling. His actions were typical of a predator looking for prey. Forensic experts found traces of DNA under Ashling's fingernails, suggesting she fought back and injured her attacker. DNA from tissue samples matched Joseph, and his fingerprints were found on a green bicycle. All witnesses who saw the attacker that day identified him as Joseph. New evidence emerged during the investigation, particularly from one of Josef's friends, a Slovakian bus driver. On the night of January 12, while working, he encountered Joseph, who had severe scratches on his stomach. Concerned, the driver offered Joseph a ride home. Joseph mentioned he had gotten into a fight but did not provide details about the incident. During the drive, the bus driver repeatedly questioned Joseph about what had happened, but Joseph avoided giving clear answers and kept holding his stomach, which was bleeding. The driver grew increasingly worried, suspecting that the injuries might be linked to the ethnic cleansing events happening at that time, as there were widespread expressions of hatred against other nationalities. To deflect his friend's questions, Joseph concocted a story about being attacked by a masked man, claiming he couldn't identify the attacker because he hadn't seen his face before and didn't know him. Joseph attempted to portray himself as a hero, claiming he had seen a masked stranger attacking a woman near the canal. Joseph claimed he was stabbed multiple times as he tried to approach the bleeding girl. He became frightened when he realized what had happened and then fled. Despite being suspected of murder, he began to insist that he was actually the savior, having been injured in a fight with the real attacker. However, this new account does not clarify how his DNA was found under Ashling's fingernails or his fingerprints on the green bike he left behind. Joseph's defense argued that his false confession about the attack on Ashling resulted from the painkillers he received in the hospital, which caused him to feel euphoric and led him to speak to himself. Joseph stated that he was under the influence of these drugs when the police began their interrogation. However, doctors who treated Joseph contradicted this claim. They stated that he only received a minimal dose of the medication, meaning it could not have significantly affected him by the time he made his confession. The prosecution highlighted that Joseph had changed his testimony multiple times, making his statements unreliable. However, this posed a challenge for the prosecution because Joseph had no history of violence, especially against women. There were no indications of aggression or cruelty in his behavior, and he had no connection to Ashling, raising questions about his motive for the attack. The prosecution argued that the incident was not a result of personal issues. The trial lasted 3 weeks, after which a jury of 12 members returned their verdict. They deliberated for 3 hours before finding Joseph Puska guilty of the murder of Ashling Murphy. As a result, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The circumstances surrounding Ashling's murder shocked the nation. Just days after the tragedy, protests were held across Ireland in support of the victim's family, and the case shocked the nation. During the investigation, police determined that Joseph had attacked Ashling without any apparent motive. He did not know her. He appeared to be a predator who had been searching for a victim for hours. Unfortunately, Ashling fell victim to a monster. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Alicia Canales McGuire. Alicia Canales McGuire was born on October 29, 1992, in Mount Vernon, Washington, to Manuel and Michelle Canales. Growing up on a farm, she learned the value of hard work and often returned to her family's farm to help. Spending time with loved ones is essential to Alicia. She talks to them often. Alicia lives in Birdsview with her husband Bradley, whom she married in a beach ceremony at Deception Pass in July 2017. She had just gotten married 2 months ago, and Alicia is excited about having her own family. Her sister, Amanda Canales, who has 3 children, is about to go on a business trip to New York and asks Alicia to babysit while she is away. Alicia happily agrees because she loves her nieces and nephews. Alicia has been taking care of her grandchildren with an in-house nanny. When the nanny heard the gunshots, she rushed to check. She found Alicia dead at the door. The nanny immediately called 911, asking for help. When the police arrived, they began searching the house to make sure the perpetrator was no longer inside. The police verified that only the nanny and Amanda's children were present. After the children were safely removed from the house, the police began collecting evidence. A car was parked in front of the house near where Alicia was shot, with shell casings nearby, indicating that the shooter had been next to the car, near the front door. Several bullets were lodged in the door frame and Alicia's body was lying face down outside the door. The crime did not appear to be a robbery, as the house was undisturbed and there were no signs of forced entry. This led the police to wonder who might have wanted to kill Alicia and why. However, police attention was diverted when they learned that the house belonged to Alicia's sister, Amanda. They began to consider the possibility of mistaken identity, suspecting that Amanda might have been the intended target. But Amanda was in New York at the time of the shooting. The nanny, who was in the house when the shooting occurred, was questioned by police. They asked her if she had seen the shooter or knew anyone who might have wanted to harm Alicia. The nanny reported that she was upstairs when she heard the gunshots. When she ran downstairs, she found Alicia lying face down and unconscious on the floor. Unfortunately, the nanny did not see the shooter. Alicia's acquaintances told the police that Alicia seemed to get along well with her husband, Bradley. However, she gave the police a crucial clue when she mentioned that Alicia's sister, Amanda, was having problems with her ex-husband, Kevin Lewis. After reviewing reports from the local sheriff's office, the police discovered that they had been called to Amanda and Kevin's address several times before, all in connection with domestic disputes. The police found this information particularly interesting and decided to investigate further. Before dawn, they visited Kevin at his home in another part of Everett. When they knocked on the door, Kevin opened the door, looking as if he had just woken up. During the conversation, the officers asked Kevin if he knew where Amanda was, and he replied that she should be home. The police questioned Kevin about his whereabouts the night before. He claimed to have gone home, saying that his sister and mother would confirm his alibi. He did not ask why the police were there. When they told him that there had been a shooting in the house where his children lived, he showed no emotion, which was unusual for a father. He should have asked if his children were okay, but he did not. When the police told him that Amanda was away on business, Kevin appeared genuinely surprised, exclaiming, "Really?" and ending the conversation. As they left, the police discovered surveillance cameras at 2 nearby homes that could help corroborate Kevin's story. After reviewing the footage, the police discovered a car parked near Kevin's driveway about 40 minutes before the attack on Alicia. The footage showed someone resembling Kevin walking out the front door, getting into the car, and driving away, contradicting Kevin's claim that he had been home all night. The recording was not clear enough to confirm the identity of the person as Kevin. To gather more information, the police reviewed footage from another camera, which gave them a closer look at the car, but did not help identify it. All they could see was that it was a light-colored car. They fast-forwarded the footage and saw the car return about 20 minutes later. However, they now noticed a crucial detail: the right front tire of this car was different from the other 3. The 3 tires were light-colored, while the right front tire was dark. The car stopped near Kevin's house, and the same person seen in the first footage got out of the car and walked back to the house. Whoever this man was, he had entered the house about 20 minutes before the 911 call about a shooting started coming in. The car then drove away and never returned. It was a 15-minute drive from Kevin's house to Amanda's, meaning the car had enough time to get to Amanda's house, or it may not have been involved in the shooting. Amanda first learned of younger sister Alicia's death when her father called her, just hours after the tragedy. Amanda was in New York at the time, away from her family. Alicia's death was especially devastating, as she had recently married and was looking forward to starting a family of her own. When police questioned Amanda about potential suspects, she immediately pointed to her ex-husband Kevin as the likely culprit. During their 8 years together, Amanda endured physical abuse, leaving her bruised. Even after their divorce in June 2017, Kevin's behavior did not change. He continued to threaten Amanda, causing her to fear for her safety. Following a court ruling in August 2017, Amanda was awarded full custody of their 3 young children. The court ordered Kevin to pay $800 a month. This marked a new beginning for Amanda, as she rebuilt her life in Everett, Washington. Surrounded by the love and support of her family, Amanda overcame the challenges of being a single mother. Kevin threatened Amanda, saying he would kill her. As a former soldier, he had been trained. Amanda believed she was the target of the attack, but younger sister died. She even obtained a restraining order against Kevin, but he violated the order several times. Kevin frequently loitered outside her home, peering through windows and instilling fear in Amanda and her 3 children. Although he ignored the restraining order, he was never charged by the police. In one particularly disturbing incident just weeks before her sister was murdered, Amanda was brutally beaten as she got out of her car. She was returning home late at night and had parked in the driveway next to her house. She didn't see the attacker's face because the attack happened so suddenly, but she was certain Kevin was the culprit. Kevin Lewis, 30, was initially the prime suspect in the death of Alicia Canales McGuire. Police believed he was targeting his ex-wife. However, Kevin did not know Amanda was in New York, nor did he know Alicia was babysitting Amanda's children while she was away. Police found discrepancies. If the person in the video was indeed Kevin, he would have been home during the entire time of the shooting. Furthermore, his sister and mother had provided Kevin with a solid alibi. Therefore, the police continued to investigate and look into what happened. Upon returning to Amanda's home, the police re-examined the crime scene. Ballistics experts determined that Alicia was shot with the door partially open. The shooter fired at least 7 shots from outside the house, then fired inside. Evidence at the crime scene showed that the shooter fired multiple shots while standing next to the garage, then moved toward the door and fired again from inside. Alicia's autopsy revealed that she died from multiple gunshot wounds to the head and torso, with a total of 5 shots hitting her. 2 of the shots caused gunpowder wounds, suggesting they were fired at close range. Although the medical examiner was unable to determine the exact order of the shots, it is believed that the 2 head wounds may have been the final shots. Forensic analysis confirmed that all 7 shell casings found at the scene came from the same type of gun. The wounds to Alicia's head were consistent with shots fired at close range. The shell casings found at the crime scene also caught the attention of police because the type of shell casing was uncommon. It was a Russian-made shell casing under the brand name Telamo. Since this was not a common brand, police hoped to identify the seller or buyer of the bullets. After investigating, they discovered that a Walmart store near the crime scene had sold the bullets. A Walmart representative informed police that a man had purchased the bullets and that they had surveillance footage of the transaction. After reviewing the footage, which was recorded on September 18, 2 days before Alicia died, police thought the buyer might be Kevin. However, they were wrong, as the man in the footage was not Kevin. The buyer paid with a credit card, allowing police to obtain his name. After investigating this new lead, police found no connection between the man and Kevin, Alicia, Amanda, or the nanny. Therefore, police needed to find new evidence to move the case forward. Amanda says that at first their relationship was good, but eventually he became violent and started hitting her. The relationship ended in a messy divorce, with a restraining order and full custody of the children awarded to Amanda. Amanda was devastated to learn that it was Alicia who died in the shooting. Believing it was a case of mistaken identity, she believed the bullets were meant for her and told the police that Kevin was the attacker. However, according to surveillance cameras, Kevin was home at the time of the shooting. During the investigation, the police reviewed the footage taken the night of Alicia's death again. Now they noticed something they had not noticed before. This low-quality recording showed Kevin leaving the house, walking to the car and getting into the back seat behind the driver. But why wasn't he in the front passenger seat? In search of an answer, the police concluded that someone else was in the front passenger seat. So, when the car pulled up in front of Kevin's house, there were probably two people in the car. Police had no evidence that Kevin was involved in Alicia's death, but they collected evidence of Kevin's attacks on his ex-wife Amanda and arrested him in November 2018. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and Alicia's case remains unsolved after more than a year. A breakthrough in her case came in 2019 when a woman contacted the police station with crucial information. The woman reported that she had attended a party near Spokane, where she met a girl who claimed to be involved in a murder. This girl, Angelica, bragged about being hired to commit a crime on York Road, the same location where Alicia was shot and killed. Even though Spokane is a 5-hour drive from Everett, police decided to follow up on the lead. According to the woman, Angelica mentioned that she and her boyfriend were involved in the case, saying that the victim died from a gunshot wound to the head, fired from a corner. They were hired by the children's father. Furthermore, Angelica said that they had taken the life of the wrong person. It was a case of mistaken identity. The police have never released details about this case. Only the police and family members know that Alicia was shot in the head. Considering that Angelica knew many details about the crime, the police were interested in this information. During the search for Angelica, the police discovered that her real name was Alexis Hale. On her social media profile, they found photos of her holding a 9mm pistol, which could be the murder weapon. In addition, some videos show a man in the background, identified as her boyfriend, Jaden Phelps. A video posted by Alexis on the night of Alicia's death shows her filming through the windshield of a car, analyzing traffic signs. Police were able to pinpoint the exact location of the car, about a 10-minute drive from Kevin's house. A few days after Alicia's death, police discovered a video of Jaden bragging about a large sum of money. Further investigation led them to a social media post by Jaden, where they found 5 comments, one of which was from his aunt. When they looked at her profile, they realized she was also Kevin's mother. It turned out Jaden was Kevin's cousin. Police now had enough evidence to make an arrest. The first person to be handcuffed was Alexis Hale. She screamed and said the police couldn't arrest her because she was only 17. She knew why she was being arrested and asked for a lawyer. Around the same time, police arrested Jaden in another part of town. To build their case, police analyzed phone records from both Jaden and Alexis, revealing a trip from Spokane to Everett that coincided with the shooting. Alexis did not tell police anything. Kevin is in prison, serving a 3-year sentence for assaulting Amanda. Therefore, police hope to get some information from Jaden. Police obtained a confession and the name of the person who hired Alexis and Jaden. It was Kevin Lewis. To gather more information, the police took Jaden to the crime scene and asked him to describe what happened. Jaden began explaining how Kevin brought him there and showed him where the house was, and then Jaden took Kevin home. Jaden was then asked by the police to describe what happened when his girlfriend Alexis knocked on the door. Jaden explained that the door was ajar and Alicia stuck her head out and saw Alexis walking out the door. As Alexis was walking away, Jaden rounded the corner and started shooting. Alicia closed the door, but Jaden opened it again and continued shooting. He fired 2 more shots before Alicia was able to close the door. Jaden then said that he ran from the crime scene. Kevin Lewis was arrested on charges of aggravated murder with a firearm. Conspiracy to commit murder and solicitation of murder in connection with the death of Alicia Canales McGuire in 2017, while he was serving time for assaulting his ex-wife Amanda. The two people involved in the case are Jaden Phelps and Alexis Hale. Jaden, then 20, pleaded guilty to first-degree intentional homicide in July 2020 and was sentenced to 31 years in prison. Alexis, then 18, also pleaded guilty and received the 15-year sentence. During his trial, Jaden testified that he committed the crime for money and street cred. Jaden used the money Kevin paid him to get tattoos and buy a pair of Timberland boots and a Ferragamo belt. He claimed Alexis took the handgun from a family member and he split $200 with her. Kevin pleaded not guilty and went to trial later that year. The prosecution claimed that Kevin paid Jaden and Alexis $2,400 to harm his ex-wife Amanda, but that they were mistaken identities and caused Alicia's tragic death. Jaden and Alexis claimed that Kevin gave them the address. And Jaden claimed that he did not know who the target was, only the address. Jaden received the payment after dropping Kevin off at his home. Jaden and his girlfriend Alexis then returned to the location Kevin had indicated. They got out of the car and approached the house, with Jaden stopping near the garage and Alexis knocking on the front door. When Alicia answered, Alexis left and Jaden continued to fire until he ran out of ammunition. Jaden initially fired from his position near the garage and then went up to the front porch to fire the remaining shots. He pointed the gun at the house, aiming at Alicia's neck and head area. They then drove away but quickly returned, concerned that they might have left a glove at the scene. However, when they saw a police car, they turned around and left the area, using GPS directions to drive back to Spokane. The defense argued that Kevin never actually used the word kill when speaking to Jaden and said that Kevin only said to get the target off the road. However, the prosecution countered that Kevin had a history of violence and had threatened Amanda. In November 2021, Kevin Lewis was convicted of first-degree murder after a 6-week trial, with the jury reaching a verdict in less than 3.5 hours. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole in January 2022. As part of his sentence, Kevin was also banned from contacting his ex-wife and children for the rest of his life. He is currently serving his sentence at the Washington State Prison in Walla Walla County. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Denise Huskins. In the late hours of Sunday, March 22, 2015, 29-year-old Denise Huskins was alone in her Vallejo apartment in the San Francisco Bay Area of California. She had planned to spend the evening by herself, but her phone buzzed with a message from her ex-boyfriend, Aaron Quinn, asking to meet up for a discussion. Denise felt apprehensive, especially since they had ended relationship and she was hesitant to engage with him due to his past actions. Denise initially declined, telling Aaron it was too late and suggesting they talk another time. However, after receiving another message from him, she sat on sofa, contemplating her next move, and she thought about how she had met Aaron last summer. Originally from Boston, Massachusetts, Denise had a doctorate in physical therapy and had moved to Vallejo to join Kaiser Hospital, which specialized in treating individuals with head and spinal injuries. It was there that she met Aaron, a tall, athletic man with dark hair and striking eyes. Denise and Aaron quickly got acquainted and started chatting with each other. At first, they shared stories about their past. Aaron had been engaged before, but the relationship ended when he found out his fiancée had cheated on him. Denise listened and showed sympathy, but she found herself developing feelings for him too. As they spent more time together, their friendship has turned into love. By autumn 2014, they were officially a couple. However, things took a turn in March 2015, when Denise discovered that Aaron was secretly reaching out to his ex-fiancée, asking her to take him back. This revelation upset Denise deeply, and she decided to cut ties with him altogether. Even though she knew they had many common interests and had considered getting married, this fact still hurt her a lot. The feeling of betrayal and hurt overshadowed her love for Aaron, leaving her heart aching. She tried to ignore the stream of texts from Aaron. He asking to meet up and discuss their situation. His persistence left Denise torn and uncertain. Although her heart was still hurting, under his persistent persuasion, Denise began to feel shaken, and she gave in and agreed to meet. Denise got up from her sofa and prepared to leave her residence. At around 5:30 p.m., she got in the car and then, on the way, she stopped to buy a pizza. When she arrived at Aaron's two-story house on the 500 block of Kirkland Avenue, she collected the pizza from the passenger seat and took her purse before approaching the entrance. The next day, a workday for both of them at the hospital, Aaron called in sick at around 7 a.m., claiming illness. Denise also texted her supervisor, said she would be absent that week because she had family matters to attend to. This was an unusual thing for Denise, as she had never missed a day of work before. Denise's supervisor reminded her about the upcoming deadline for a scholarship, but she didn't respond. He assumed that something serious must have happened in her family. On the following Monday, when Aaron and Denise didn't show up to work, the Vallejo Police Department received a call from 30-year-old Aaron. His story was confusing and hard to believe. When the officers arrived at the scene, they found a strong chemical smell and many empty beer containers. Aaron also appeared disheveled. When questioned about the illegal substance use, Aaron admitted to using them, but claimed he had been forced by kidnappers. The officers were skeptical, so they continued their search, heading upstairs to the master bedroom. As they entered, the chemical smell grew stronger. The room appeared to have been recently cleaned, with spotless floors, except for a substance on the mattress. Just as they were about to leave, they noticed a small red blood spot on the bed. The officers returned downstairs to re-examine Aaron's account. He began to retell his story. The incident began at his residence around 3 a.m. where he and his girlfriend Denise were staying. A group of men wearing black aquatic gear stormed in, bursting into the house and shining a bright light directly into their eyes. Aaron couldn't determine the exact number of attackers, but they quickly restrained him and Denise with nylon cable ties. The assailants also made them wear swim goggles with an opaque coating, preventing them from seeing beyond the goggles. The attackers were equipped with laser-targeting guns, electroshock weapons, and powerful flashlights. As they moved through the house, strong light and laser beams intertwined, causing him and Denise to not be able to see anything. Aaron and Denise were asked to wear headphones that played a strange, calming music. A voice then told them through the headphones that they were not in any danger and this was just a robbery. The voice reassured them that if they stayed calm, no harm would come to them. Believing the voice, Aaron and Denise remained silent and still. Later, Aaron's headphones were removed, and he was ordered to move to another room. In this new room, the thieves demanded that Aaron give them his bank account information and other financial details. Aaron quickly gave them the information, realizing that his money was likely gone for good. Aaron and Denise were taken back to the living room by the burglars. One of them checked their blood pressure and then forced them to drink a mixture from a mug that contained a sedative mixed with another substance. Before the sedative kicked in, Aaron heard the burglars' final orders. They had installed cameras to monitor the house. He was told not to contact the police and was threatened that if he did, they would take Denise as a hostage. The burglars promised to send further instructions later. Soon after, the sedative took effect, and Aaron passed out, unaware of what was happening around him. When Aaron regained consciousness, he found Denise missing. He struggled to break free and managed to untie his hands, then grabbed the phone to call for emergency help. The police found the story he told suspicious, so they came up with another theory, that Aaron might have been involved in Denise's disappearance. Or even worse, her death. The police thought he might have hidden her body and then thoroughly cleaned the house to remove any evidence. The strong smell of bleach and other cleaning products seemed to further support their guess as being correct. He then turned to alcohol, as evidenced by the empty bottles and his incoherent speech. To appear innocent, he possibly delayed reporting the incident and created a false story about strange abductors wearing water gear to cover his involvement. The police, however, were not convinced by his tale and considered it a diversion. They asked him to prepare to go to the station for questioning. Following a 17-hour interrogation, the police were unable to find any concrete evidence to support Aaron's claims that Denise was still missing, despite his continued insistence that she was. The Vallejo police immediately started a thorough search by using K-9 units, divers, and many volunteers. After talking to Denise's roommate, they discovered Denise and Aaron had recently broken up, which could be a motive. However, before suspecting Aaron, they needed to consider the possibility of a real kidnapping. The police carefully looked at every detail of Aaron's story, searching for any information about the alleged kidnappers, such as what they looked like and what they said. As the investigation continued, they see Aaron's story became increasingly unreasonable. According to Aaron, he'd have given his banking information to the people who kidnapped him, but investigation found that his money was still there. Furthermore, just 2 hours before Aaron reporting the incident, he tried to withdraw a large amount of money from his account, saying he wanted to buy a boat. However, when questioned by detectives, Aaron said his kidnappers had actually demanded a ransom of $8,500. He couldn't convince the bank of this, so he made up the boat purchase story. The fact that the kidnappers had the temerity to capture him and Denise just for this money raised doubts about his story. During his interview, a detective noticed that Aaron's pupils were larger than usual, which could be a sign of drug use or a mental health condition, such as schizophrenia. It's also possible that his unusual story of being abducted by alien-like people could have been a hallucination. Due to the complexity of the case, the Vallejo police asked for assistance from the FBI. When the agents first arrived, they gave Aaron a polygraph test, which he failed. As a result, he became suspicious in the eyes of the investigators, so he quickly hired a lawyer to protect his rights. With the support of his legal team, Aaron let the police search his home, electronic devices, clothes, and even gave them a blood and fingerprint sample. The next day, the police organized a massive search in Vallejo, with over 100 teams participating. A police sonar detected an object in the bay that looked like a human body, but divers were unable to locate it. Meanwhile, Aaron has found a lawyer and is no longer in police custody. The search for Denise is intensified, with her picture being widely shared across various media platforms and displayed throughout the city. However, the detectives and FBI agents working on the case faced major obstacles. On the afternoon of March 24th, a journalist at the San Francisco Chronicle received a strange and unexpected email. The sender claimed to be the people who broke into Aaron's home, dressed in diving gear. The email stated that Denise was safe and included an audio recording of her summarizing recent news articles to prove this thing. This evidence initially alleviated concerns about her safety, showing that she was well up, at least until that morning. However, two aspects of this evidence raised suspicions. Firstly, Denise's message seemed unnaturally calm, similar to a news anchor reporting on a story. Secondly, the email was sent from an account belonging to Aaron, which led authorities to suspect that he and Denise might have been involved in staging the kidnapping. The police grew even more suspicious when Aaron presented his phone records, showing calls from the alleged kidnappers. However, these calls were made from an untraceable phone, which meant the caller's identity remained unknown. Investigators tracked down the location where this disposable phone was purchased, a store near Aaron's home. Surveillance footage from the store clearly showed an individual with a physical description matching Aaron's: tall, athletic build, and dark hair. This discovery further implicated Aaron in the suspected kidnapping plot Denise. 2 days after vanishing, Denise resurfaced at her mother's home in Huntington Beach, California, approximately 400 miles from Vallejo, where she was supposedly abducted. As she recounted her ordeal, her story became even more extraordinary than Aaron's account. Denise insisted she was kidnapped by 4 men who kept her confined to a small space. They told her that their actions were following instructions from a client. Despite this, Denise stated that her captors treated her relatively well, providing her with basic necessities such as food and water, and allowing her to maintain her personal hygiene. Denise was initially cooperative with the police, but she became defensive and sought a lawyer when she sensed the officers didn't believe her. This left the investigators confused and skeptical of her story. They thought that Aaron and Denise might have made up the abduction story to get attention, become famous, or escape their problems for a while. The detectives were known to understand why 2 successful people from wealthy families would create such a complicated and fake story. The Vallejo police held a news conference to reassure everyone that there was no need to be concerned about recent assaults in the area. Despite not identifying a suspect or confirming that an abductor existed, they maintained that residents had nothing to worry about. The media remained highly interested in the case, drawing parallels to the movie Gone Girl, where the main character stages her own disappearance. Authorities expressed disappointment that Denise and Aaron had fabricated this story, wasting their time and resources. They asked Denise and Aaron to issue an official apology to the people of Vallejo. However, Denise and Aaron stuck to their story, insisting they were truthful. In the early hours of June 5, 2015, a crucial clue was found in the Denise case. A police officer in Alameda County, Northern California, report received to a reported burglary at a residence. The homeowner and his wife reported that an intruder broke in under the cover of darkness, attempting to restrain them. The homeowner fought off the attacker while his wife locked herself in the bathroom and called for help. The attacker fled the scene, but in his haste, he left behind his smartphone in the hallway. The police found that the phone was registered to an individual through a telecommunications provider. They tracked the registered address but found the property empty and the mailbox full of uncollected mail. 3 days later, the police used the discarded smartphone to track a lead 200 miles northeast of Vallejo, to an isolated cabin near South Lake Tahoe, California. The officers cautiously entered the cabin, where they found a tall, athletic man with dark hair amidst the clutter of leftover food, trash, and piles of clothes. Initially, they overlooked the vehicle parked outside. However, upon further inspection, they discovered that the car had been reported stolen and contained several unusual items, including flashlights, a plastic gun with laser sights, a modified headset, and a black diving suit. A laptop belonging to Aaron was also found in the trunk. This clue led to the capture of one of the individuals responsible for the abduction of Denise. The man, who bore a striking resemblance to Aaron, but was not him, had no prior connection to Denise and Aaron. The abductor was identified as Matthew Muller, a 38-year-old disbarred attorney who had graduated from Harvard University and was a former Marine with a previously reputation in the legal community. Matthew began to engage in strange and unlawful behavior. The authorities connected him to a home invasion in Dublin and discovered he was also involved in Denise's abduction from Aaron's home. The unusual story Aaron and Denise told to law enforcement was mostly true. Their only mistake was thinking multiple people in diving gear had invaded. In reality, Matthew was the mastermind behind the crime and acted alone. It's likely that Aaron and Denise were confused and half asleep, which led them to believe it was more than one person involved in the incident. The intense light caused Denise and Aaron to believe there were multiple attackers. This illusion was furthered by a pre-recorded message that played through headphones, in which the attacker claimed to be a member of a professional debt recovery team. Matthew had also been linked to a 2009 home invasion in Palo Alto but managed to avoid consequences due to lack of evidence. Matthew, a highly intelligent and trained lawyer, had carefully crafted an elaborate and outlandish scheme made authorities suspected Denise and Aaron of staging a hoax. Matthew's actions were carefully planned, reflecting his intelligence, even though he was having mental health problems, bipolar disorder, and psychosis, and he believed he also had Gulf War syndrome, which made it difficult for him to distinguish reality. One day, Matthew randomly met Aaron and Denise, and he became fixated on them. He used a drone to secretly watch Denise and Aaron's every move for 3 weeks before abducting them. Aaron did notice a bright light in the sky the night before the incident, which he thought might be a drone, but he couldn't imagine someone was actually spying on him. Matthew put his plan into action, breaking into Aaron's home at night, while wearing a diving suit. He used restraints on both Aaron and Denise, covering their eyes with goggles and playing a pre-recorded message through headphones to make them believe multiple people were involved. Matthew then separated them, keeping them in different rooms. He attacked Denise, taking advantage of her vulnerability, and locked her in the trunk of his car. He then drove her to a remote cabin in South Lake Tahoe, where he held her for 2 days, then letting her go near her parents' house. Matthew also stole Aaron's laptop, which he later used to send an email to a journalist at the San Francisco Chronicle using special software. After waking up the next day, Aaron faced the devastating truth that Denise's kidnapping was real. Desperate, Aaron contacted his bank to request a large sum of money, $88,500, to pay the ransom. Panicked and trying to protect Denise, he came up with a false reason, telling the bank he needed the money to buy a boat. Later, Aaron contacted Kaiser Hospital and left a message for Denise's supervisor, informing them that she would be absent from work, as instructed by Matthew. The investigation uncovered a disturbing video recorded by Matthew, showing him physically abuse Denise. After seeing the evidence, the Vallejo police apologized to Denise and Aaron because at first thought they had made up the story of being kidnapped. Denise and Aaron decided to sue the city of Vallejo, citing the mistreatment they received during the investigation. The lawsuit ultimately resulted in a $2.5 million settlement, acknowledging the mistakes made in handling the case. Matthew Muller was found guilty of kidnapping charges and received a 40-year prison sentence in 2017. During his trial, Matthew expressed remorse for his actions and the pain he caused. After the kidnapping, the victim, Denise, faced skepticism and was even accused of making it up. Ironically, Matthew the crime came forward to defend her. He sent 2 anonymous letters to the media, claiming that the kidnapping had indeed taken place. Denise also experienced relentless nightmares and struggled to overcome the trauma. She waited until Matthew's conviction in 2017 to openly discuss the incident. Denise reported she being held by multiple men, which Matthew confirmed by admitting he had accomplices, although he refused to reveal their identities. Aaron and Denise grew closer, got married, had a child. Then they wrote a book together called Victory F that told the story of their experience. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Frank Spencer. Frank Spencer was born on November 10, 1965 in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, to Cyrus and Melline Spencer. Growing up, he enjoyed active games and sports, which helped him develop a strong physique. During his high school years, Frank excelled as a member of the wrestling team and showed exceptional leadership abilities. After graduating from high school in 1984, Frank continued his studies at a local university and completed his studies in 1988. After the death of his father, Frank took over the family business, becoming the owner of Spencer's Auto Parts and Used Cars. An important event in the young man's life took place in 1997, when he met Maria through a mutual friend, Paul Siciliano. Frank Spencer and Maria immediately became close, attracted to each other's dynamic personalities. Maria was known for her hot temper, strong will and bold personality, and was also extremely affectionate. However, not everyone was happy with the relationship. Maria's father, Anthony Rocco, did not approve of Frank and even tried to prevent their marriage. Frank's family was also unhappy with his choice. Due to the opposition of both families, the couple decided to elope and rent an apartment. Eventually, their families were forced to accept their feelings. Maria and Frank got married and started a family, having a son and a daughter. They moved to a new house, and Frank worked hard to provide for his family through his auto parts business and sponsorship of racing cars. As the head of the family, his children became his top priority and motivation. However, Maria's priorities were different. She doesn't take care of her family, she's cold to the kids. Unlike her husband, she's not passionate about the marriage. She loves to spend what Frank earns, and what really worries her is money. Maria's behavior increasingly caused problems in their marriage. Frank became increasingly dissatisfied with her selfishness and eccentric behavior. He felt that as a mother, she should grow up and think of others. However, Maria did not change. In 2006, he filed for divorce, fed up with his wife's inappropriate behavior. Sometimes she behaved so irrationally that Frank feared for the children's health. At that time, the idea of divorce seemed like the only right solution. However, the confrontation became more tense as Frank sought to gain custody of the children. He did not trust his ex-wife Maria and believed that she was not capable of properly caring for the children. However, not everyone agreed with his stance. His friend Ron argued that both parents were necessary for the healthy development of the children and advised Frank to negotiate a joint custody agreement with Maria. Despite this, Frank was adamant about pursuing sole custody, believing he knew what was best. In response, Maria also pushed for sole custody and was expecting to receive a substantial child support payment. Their conflict, which grew over time. On several occasions, Maria's erratic behavior led to her attacking him and the children. Frank had to call the police. However, some people did not believe Frank. And an incident that happened in 2008 proved his testimony to be true. An argument broke out between Maria and her ex-mother-in-law near her children's school, leading to Maria's arrest. The problem started when Maria went to pick up her daughter, but Frank's mother intervened, trying to stop her. It was later revealed that there was an agreement between the two. Frank's mother would be the one to pick up the children that day. But Maria changed her mind at the last minute, deliberately taking the children away. After the fight, Maria picked up the child and put her in the car, but did not put her in a seatbelt. The police stopped the car and determined that Maria's actions endangered the child's life and health. As a result, Maria faced charges of disorderly conduct. Furthermore, her ex-husband, Frank, accused her of stalking, claiming that she had followed him on multiple occasions. However, the prosecution could not prove that the child's life was in danger, so the police offered Maria a deal. They would drop the child endangerment charges if she pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct and stalking. Maria accepted the deal, pleading guilty and being fined $600. Despite this, Maria did not change her behavior. Instead, she became more outrageous after the incident. Frank's acquaintances and relatives grew increasingly concerned as he shared his complaints about Maria. She began to threaten and her stalking behavior continued. Several of Maria's co-workers later revealed that she often expressed deep hatred for Frank, even stating that she was willing to end his life. This led one co-worker to jokingly call her the Black Widow. Despite the tension, Frank tried to stay calm and resolve the situation amicably. He tried to reason with Maria several times, but she refused to stop her behavior. As a precaution, Frank began to record their conflicts. His intention was not to get Maria into legal trouble, but to have evidence in case things escalated further. Frank just wanted to live and work in peace, but Maria's actions continued to cross the line. By 2009, the Frank's divorce proceedings had dragged on for a long time, with the children staying with their father, Frank. Meanwhile, Frank had begun dating a woman named Julie Dent. Although Maria claimed that she did not mind Frank's new relationship, she was said to have been upset by Julie's closeness to the children. Frank believed that Maria's jealousy was the root cause of the troubles. Maria's anger grew, and in February 2009, she left a voicemail warning Julie to stay away from her children. However, the situation really escalated when Maria's father, Rocco, was released from prison after 5 years for fraud. Frank knew of his ex-father-in-law's reputation and feared more trouble, believing that Maria had inherited her father's erratic temperament. At this point, those around Frank noticed that he was becoming increasingly anxious. After Rocco is released, a robbery occurs at Frank's office, where important documents related to the divorce proceedings are stolen. The next day, Maria contacts Frank, saying that she discovered a trash bag containing interesting items on the porch. Frank understands the implication and advises her to return the stolen items. He also reports the break-in to the police, but despite their best efforts, they are unable to prove that anyone was involved in the incident. According to the police, no evidence of the perpetrators was found. However, it is clear that Maria and her father had a motive for the crime. The investigation considered Maria a suspect, but the case was eventually dropped due to lack of evidence. The police's efforts led Maria to return the documents she had taken from Frank, as these documents did not contain any important information that could be used as evidence in court. The situation continued to worsen until it reached a breaking point. Maria began sending threats to Frank's new girlfriend, Julie, on social media. She was still upset that the children were still in contact with Julie. Unlike Maria, Julie remained calm and enjoyed spending time with Frank and the children. She tried not to get involved in a complicated relationship between Frank and his ex-wife, but Julie was deeply troubled and Maria prioritized revenge over parental responsibility. The disputes between Frank and his ex-wife Maria continued until 2010, when Frank finally lost patience. He went to the police and asked them to evaluate Maria's behavior, providing their correspondence as evidence. The correspondence contained indirect threats, but Maria claimed that this was her way of communicating and that she had no intention of causing harm. Once again, Maria's guilt could not be proven because her warnings sounded vague. This time, Maria was not punished. In January 2010, Frank and Julie planned a romantic getaway to the Caribbean, but on the eve of the trip, a fire broke out at his mother's house. Although no one was injured, the house was devastated by flames and smoke. Witnesses reported that Maria drove up to the scene with her neighbors and acquaintances, smiled at the fire, and drove away. After firefighters extinguished the fire, a dog owned by one of Frank's children was found in the ashes. The incident became so serious that Frank had to call the police again, as it became clear that the fire was no accident. Maria's actions had escalated to the point where it was clear that she would not stop until she achieved her goal. The police found no evidence of arson in the first fire and the fire was ruled an accident. Maria later sent Frank a text message in which she gloated about what had happened, and wrote about how karma had caught up with him, and that since her life had been ruined, he could expect more consequences. When the police took no action, Maria became bolder and began openly threatening Frank and his new partner Julie. A few months later, a fire broke out at Julie's house. Fortunately, she was able to escape by jumping from the porch. But her house was severely damaged and uninhabitable. Frank invited Julie to move in with him, although he was concerned that this would anger Maria further, but they had no choice. At the same time, an investigation into the cause of the fire was underway. Since Julie's home was in a different district, she and Frank hoped that the police investigation would be fair. However, the police were unable to help due to lack of evidence, and the fire was ruled an accident. Despite this, Julie was determined to get to the bottom of the matter and appealed to her superiors. This prompted the investigation. Unexpectedly, flares were found in Julie's backyard. Further investigation revealed another flare that could have caused the fire. In addition, experts determined that the steps on the roof of the house had been doused with a flammable mixture. Ultimately, after all the tests and examinations, the cause of the fire was determined to be arson. However, as in previous cases, no one was directly implicated in the crime due to lack of evidence. And those responsible were able to avoid punishment once again. In the summer of 2012, Frank and Julie made a plan to pretend to break up to distract Maria. However, the expected peace did not last long, when Frank's body was discovered on July 3rd, just a few weeks after the couple broke up. When Joe, a friend of Frank's, decided to visit Frank because he had not heard from him recently, when Joe arrived at the bungalow, he felt increasingly worried. The front door was slightly open and there were stains near the entrance. When he entered the house, he saw Frank lying on the floor, dead. Joe moved closer and noticed dried blood in Frank's ear. Without hesitation, he called the emergency services. As news of the incident spread throughout the county, people suspected they knew who was responsible for this heinous crime. Police found several key pieces of evidence at the scene, including large pools of blood, extensive drag marks, clear shoe prints on the floor, and bloody gloves in the kitchen. These were sent for analysis, which revealed that the shoe prints matched the size and style of shoes worn by Maria's father, Rocco. Additionally, Maria's skin particles were discovered inside the gloves, although she had not lived with Frank for over a year, making it unlikely that the gloves had been left behind by accident. The evidence linked Rocco and Maria to the crimes, leading to their arrests. An autopsy and ballistics analysis revealed that Frank had been shot with two different types of guns. He was initially shot with a .30 caliber sniper rifle while standing near the front door. A sniper's nest was discovered approximately 115 feet from the house. The bullet passed through Frank's hand and into his chest, severing a vital artery and causing a fatal wound. However, the attackers continued to attack. They dragged Frank into the house, where a second shot was fired into his head with a .357 Magnum revolver. By that time, the man was already dead, so the final shot was considered an act of revenge. The violent nature of the crime suggests that the shooter had a deep hatred for Frank. Based on this evidence, police suspect that Rocco fired the first shot from the sniper rifle, while Maria fired the last shot. Additionally, police discovered that Frank's car and dog were missing from the house. A review of traffic camera footage showed that Frank's car had been driven away from his home onto an interstate. However, the identity of the driver could not be determined. The car was later found in Sunbury, Pennsylvania, 27 miles from Frank's home and 5 miles from Maria's. However, no fingerprints or other evidence were found inside the car. 2 days after the incident, Frank's dog was found at a wedding in Dauphin. Attendees immediately recognized the dog as well-groomed, with an electronic chip, and the dog was returned to Frank's mother. It turned out that Frank had acquired a new pet for his children after a fire. This lucky discovery helped to clarify some aspects and effectively expose the crime. According to the investigation, the criminals took the dog with them when they fled the scene. On the way home, Rocco stopped, and during this time, attracted by the smell of food nearby, the dog escaped. It then went to a house where a wedding was taking place. This allowed the police to prove that Rocco's phone was near the wedding venue on the day of the murder, while his Harrisburg residence was 12 miles away, contradicting his claim that he was at home. It is likely that Maria was the one who came up with the idea of bringing the dog to the children, but this decision proved to be a mistake. During questioning, Rocco admitted that his son-in-law had asked him for help several times and had visited him the day before his death, which would explain the traces found at the crime scene. However, Rocco could not explain the presence of the pool of blood. His testimony did not sound sincere, and no one could confirm whether the men were on good terms. Rocco confessed that Frank had given him the car that same day, likely in an attempt to justify the finding of his fingerprints in the victim's home. By making this statement, Rocco inadvertently admitted to having been present at the crime scene the day before. Searches were conducted at Rocco's and Maria's homes for the murder weapon, but no weapon was found, as it was likely that Rocco had thrown it away. Maria also denied any guilt, claiming that the glove had accidentally appeared in Frank's home, possibly brought there by the children. Ultimately, the suspects were released to go home. However, the police continued to collect evidence necessary for the case. The police found a new lead when Derek Reed, a friend of Frank's, spoke to Maria at a school football game. Maria revealed that the last thing her husband saw before he died was her face. This new information caught the attention of the state attorney general, who was already unhappy with the way the police handled Frank's reports. Many people also complained about the matter, and an internal investigation was launched. However, it was difficult to prove that the police had neglected their duties. The police claimed that much of the information Frank provided lacked concrete evidence. The police attempted to determine the guilt of the suspects in the case, as well as their involvement in previous crimes, including stalking. And the major interrogation took place in 2013. Maria and Rocco maintained their innocence throughout the process, denying all 12 charges against them. However, their unwillingness to cooperate with the investigation led to charges of providing false testimony. Prosecutors said that Maria and Rocco arrived at Frank's house together, deliberately not using their own car to avoid attention, instead fleeing the scene in a victim's car. In late 2014, Maria was arrested again. Meanwhile, Rocco escaped. After a final interrogation, he boarded a plane and flew to Colombia. Police considered his actions an escape attempt and evidence of his guilt. For nearly a year, Rocco evaded arrest, but was finally arrested in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He was arrested by local police, and Rocco attempted to fight deportation back to the United States. However, his efforts were unsuccessful, and he was returned to his homeland to face justice. In the fall of 2015, Maria went to trial. Throughout the proceedings, she maintained her innocence and instead blamed her father for the crimes. Maria claimed that she loved Frank and never wanted him dead. However, many witnesses came forward to reveal her true nature, sharing accounts of persistent threats, stalking, and arson. The trial lasted more than a week, after which the jury returned a verdict, finding Maria Spencer guilty on all charges. These included murder, arson, burglary, conspiracy, and menacing. As a result, Maria was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 50 years. Court observers said Maria smiled throughout the trial. In a later interview, she explained her behavior, saying, "Because I didn't end his life, I tried to stay positive." A few years later, Rocco's trial began. He was furious about his daughter's accusations. Rocco claimed he was only trying to help his daughter and opposed violence. He wanted to say that Maria was the one who encouraged the crime. Despite his claims, physical evidence showed that Rocco was more involved than he let on. In the fall of 2018, Rocco Franklin was convicted of murder, robbery, and arson. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 45 years. When he was sentenced, Rocco, 77, blew a kiss to the prosecutor and police, then cursed the judge. Years later, Rocco asked for a retrial, arguing that his defense attorney had been ineffective in his conviction. Maria also tried to appeal her case, but both father and son were unsuccessful. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Shanynthia Gardner. Shanynthia Gardner was born in the late 80s in Memphis, Tennessee, USA. Not much is known about her childhood except that she was the daughter of Eleanor Snodgrass, who lived in a cozy wooden house in Madison, Alabama. Shaninthia's childhood and youth passed as normal as any other girl of her time. Shanynthia was a young girl with curly brown hair, slim and beautiful. She was always surrounded by loyal friends and showed outstanding talent. Shanynthia was full of creative spirit, had a unique talent for songwriting and a passion for music. She expressed herself through singing and attracted the attention of the local people. In addition to singing, Shanynthia was fascinated by the world of fashion and photography. She had the ability to turn everyday moments into works of art in front of the camera. Despite her diverse interests, Shanynthia was a charitable woman who attended church regularly and took good care of her family. Everything in Shaninthia's life seemed to be preordained and promised a bright future. Shanynthia was 14 when she met Daryl Clayton through mutual friends. They quickly became friends and their relationship became more serious after graduating from high school, becoming an official couple. They spent a lot of time together and were considered serious and stable young people. However, their crime records had some questionable details. Both had minor crimes such as traffic violations and disorderly conduct on the street. In 2008, Daryl was charged with assaulting a woman, even though the act was unintentional. He faced severe punishment, but all charges were later dropped. Shanynthia and Daryl were not officially married but lived together. In 2008, they had a son named Dee. Shanynthia became a caring mother, taking care of not only her son but also Daryl's 2 children from a previous relationship. Daryl's mother, Sonia Clayton, considered Shanynthia a family member, not just her son's lover. However, their relationship did not last. Although the reason is unknown, they kept in touch after the breakup. For Daryl, Shanynthia was still a good wife and a caring mother. When her son Dee was only 2 years old, Shanynthia was involved in a small incident, possibly a parking ticket or a small argument. This was insignificant compared to what would happen in her future. Marrying Martin Gardner opened a new chapter in Shaninthia's life. This union brought joy and stability to her life. Shanynthia won Martin over with her kindness and love for her children, which was reflected in her gentleness and intelligence. Their love story developed rapidly. In September 2013, they decided to live together and moved into an apartment complex in southeast Shelby County. The wedding marked the beginning of a new phase in their lives. After the celebration, they had their first son, Telone, followed by baby Saya in 2014. Soon after, their 2 daughters Savi and Yazzie were born, bringing happiness to their family. In total, Martin and Shanynthia have 4 children together and 1 child from Shaninthia's previous relationship. As a young mother, her children have always been her #1 priority. She enjoys working part-time at Children's Hospital and is actively involved in a fundraising organization to help children. It is her passion and purpose in life. On a normal Friday, July 1, 2016. Around noon, Shanynthia called her husband, Martin. Her voice was completely calm. She told him that she was going to take the children to the movies. There was no indication that something terrible was going to happen that day. At that moment, they was having a quiet conversation when a sudden and confusing event occurred. Shanynthia suddenly changed her attitude and took a kitchen knife into the living room. She attacked her 6-month-old daughter, Yazzie, leaving her defenseless and in a terrible situation. Yazzie's life was cut short abruptly by the person she loved and was closest to. Dee, the eldest child, was only 7 years old and witnessed this horrific scene. He was too young to understand what was happening, but he knew that he needed to act to save his younger brother and sister. Panicked and desperate, Dee ran out of the house. Shanynthia continued to hold the knife and chase her son. She rushed after Dee, but he screamed loudly, attracting the attention of the neighbors. Several neighbors heard his screams and rushed outside to see what was happening. They witnessed a horrifying scene that they could not forget in their minds. When they realized that Dee was being chased, but Shanynthia stopped. However, the horror was not over yet. Shanynthia returned to the house, where Savi and Talon were waiting for her. Distraught, she went upstairs to the bedroom where the children were lying. Those were the last moments of their innocent lives. Meanwhile, those who witnessed the horrifying scene quickly called the emergency services, asking for help and rescuing Dee and his siblings. None of them could have imagined the tragic consequences that awaited this peaceful street. The sheriff arrived at the scene and witnessed a strange scene inside the house at 7449 Southern Hill Road. They found Shanynthia covered in blood and her 4 children lying motionless, lifeless. The scene left everyone in shock. Shanynthia sat there, holding her cell phone and slowly dialing her husband, Martin. Her voice was soft but cold as she confessed to killing her children. The tragedy that had happened in their lives was a horrific event that would forever be remembered in this quiet neighborhood. By the time the prosecutor's office and the special forces arrived at the scene, everything was over. There was only an eerie silence in the house that had once been home to the Happy Gardner family. Blood and horror were everywhere. Investigators found a bloody knife and witnessed the horrific incident. Chaplains came to help and were shocked by what had happened. Professionals were also ready to assist Dee, who was suffering from a horror that required immediate intervention. Shanynthia was arrested and held without bail. Her trial is scheduled for July 5th. The horrific events unfolding in Shanynthia Gardner's life have left society unable to remain indifferent. Although she has been portrayed as a monster, Shanynthia is still a mother and partner who radiates love, care, and joy. Her co-worker, Michelle Jaiman, has defended Shanynthia on social media and spoken out about the injustice of the charges. Michelle also emphasized the importance of considering postpartum depression in cases like this. Dr. Joel Rissman, a psychiatrist at the University of Tennessee Medical Center, confirmed that infanticide by mothers is rare and often accompanied by mental illness. He also pointed to the lack of mental health funding in the state, which leaves many families without the support they need. Dr. Diane Barnes, an expert in postpartum psychology and health, explained the difference between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. She emphasized that the two conditions are completely different, with different symptoms. In Shaninthia's case, Dr. Diane doubts that women with postpartum depression would commit such acts. Instead, she favors the possibility that Shanynthia suffered from psychosis. The investigation into Shanynthia Gardner's case has been fraught with difficulties. Her defense attorney, Craig Morton, has chosen not to comment on the case to the media in its early stages, saying it is too early to discuss it. On July 5, 2016, Shanynthia did not speak at her trial, appearing only via video. Judge Lambert questioned her, but Shanynthia did not respond. After the trial, she was taken to the Institute of Mental Health. Shaninthia's family members were present in court but declined to comment to reporters. Morton's attorney and prosecutor, Jennifer Nichols, plans to file a motion to preserve evidence in the case, including information gathered from social media. In January 2017, Shanynthia was formally charged with 4 counts: aggravated child abuse, aggravated murder with a weapon, aggravated child abuse, and child neglect. The mysterious and chilling investigation continues, leaving the community waiting for justice and answers to many unanswered questions. The hearing was attended by Shaninthia's family members on the day of the tragedy. Sonia, Drill's mother, must have been devastated when she heard the news of the horrific tragedy. She rushed to the scene in a search for her nephew D. Sonia asserted that this action was completely unlike the Shanynthia she knew. Initially, she believed that something supernatural or demonic had caused the tragedy. However, as time passed and the initial shock subsided, Sonia began to consider possible reasons. She theorized that the couple may have been in the process of divorce. Shanynthia, fearful of raising 5 children on her own, may have made the terrifying decision to end it all. However, despite these speculations, Sonia found it hard to believe. To her, the Shanynthia she knew was not the person capable of such a terrible act. Dee's father did not believe Shanynthia was guilty. Although he was not the official guardian, he visited his son regularly after his separation from Shanynthia. However, the last time he saw his son was in November 2014. He noticed that Shanynthia was becoming more extreme in her actions and decisions. All attempts to contact her son failed and he was banned from interfering in her life. Shanintia's friends and family soon noticed a sudden change in her. She began to show unusual symptoms, from feeling irritable to deep anxiety, paranoia, and panic attacks. Her behavior became erratic and unpredictable, leading many to suspect that she was suffering from postpartum depression. The sudden change in Shanyntia's behavior shocked those around her. She had been a strong, dependable woman who had everything under control. But now, she seemed to have lost her temper, leaving many wondering what had happened. The first signs of trouble appeared in March 2015. Friends and family were puzzled. One day, Shanynthia left work early, picked up her 5 children, and drove off in an unknown direction. Her husband, Martin, thought his wife was just taking the children for a walk and relaxing in the park, as was her usual routine. However, after several hours, Martin was confused and decided to call the police. Shanynthia drove from Memphis to Corinth, 74 miles east, with her 5 children. She did not know anyone there and had no apparent reason for being there. She was later found in the emergency room at St. Francis Hospital, but police did not disclose any details. She had superficial cuts on her neck and wrists, possibly from a suicide attempt, but her children were too young to understand what was happening. After being brought home, Shanynthia began to act strangely. She told her husband Martin that someone had threatened their family, but did not provide any further information. This shocked Martin, who had never had any previous threats. When she was with family and friends, Shanynthia complained about her job and felt bad about it. She then began to say that some of her coworkers wanted to hurt her. Despite the unusual signs, Shanynthia did not exhibit abusive or violent behavior toward her children or others. The wait for trial was long and difficult, with significant delays due to multiple psychiatric evaluations of the defendant. In 2021, the final non-jury trial took place. The defense focused on Shaninthia's mental illness argument. The prosecutor acknowledged her mental condition, but argued that the defendant still had the ability to distinguish right from wrong and was aware of the illegality of her actions. Ultimately, Shelby County Criminal Court Judge James rejected the defense. In December 2021, Shanynthia Gardner was found guilty on all charges against her. In February 2022, Shanynthia, 34, appeared in court to receive her sentence, with her husband Martin present. Judge James sentenced her to life in prison for each count of murder and 15 years for each count of child abuse and neglect. Shanynthia will only be eligible for parole after serving 51 years, including the 5 years she has already served before sentencing. She will be eligible for parole at age 80, about 46 years from now. After the hearing, the prosecutor expressed approval of the sentence, saying it satisfied Martin's desire for justice for his children. Martin also felt relieved to know that Shanynthia would no longer have the opportunity to harm any more children. An evening vigil was held at Sonia family's apartment complex to remember the victims. Sonia stood among a crowd of neighbors, relatives, and police. Attendees held red and white candles, praying for the soul of the deceased. The Baptist minister said this was the first step in healing the community, and everyone could only support the surviving child and his father through this difficult time. Martin did not attend the memorial service because he was too sad. Sonia spoke to the press on his behalf. The leadership of the Children's Hospital where Shanintya worked also sent condolences. Martin's colleagues set up a social media page to help him arrange the funeral for his 4 children. During the service, Martin spoke about his family and children in an emotional and noble way. His words showed admirable resilience. At the end of his speech, Martin emphasized that he would always remember the happy image of his family, with Shanintya and the children by his side. This is a precious memory that he will cherish forever.